This video is a full-scale preview of how the Buffalo Bills have historically tried to defend Lamar Jackson and the Ravens over the years from a schematic standpoint, from a coverage perspective, really. What coverages are they trying to play? Some defenses are determined from front to back, meaning we want to be in this defensive line look, this front six or front seven, and therefore that limits us to a few coverages on the back end. However, some other defenses are back to front, and I believe that's the case with the Bills. They want to play a particular set of coverages, and then that determines the front that they can be in based upon how many players they want to allot for the coverage on the back end. They've shown some striking patterns, if you ask me, over the years in defending Lamar. A little bit frustrating to go back and look at some of the old film. We're going to go way back. In fact, in this video, we're going to show a little bit of 2019 film, 2020. Not going to display any film of 2022, the regular season loss in Baltimore in Week 4, 23-20. But Edgar Allen and myself have broken that down and kind of categorized some of that. To gloss over, to try to summarize it, I guess I should say, it almost seems like within each possession, the Bills have been willing to present a conservative defense, especially early in each drive, and then to extrapolate that out within each game at times to force us to execute longer drives, 10, 12-play drives, as opposed to giving up big plays. And in the case of the two playoff games, both of which have been in Buffalo, 2020 and 2024, both in the AFC divisional round, the Buffalo Bills were right. Turnovers were the biggest factor in those losses, and those turnovers have generally come once we have crossed midfield. The two that we'll talk about in this video, two of the ones by Lamar at least did not, but the point is the Bills' defensive choices, what they're willing to cede, how they've made those selections, it deserves some credit as well, even if we as Ravens fans think that we're the more talented team overall. This first set of plays is really me just setting the stage. I think we have 6 to illustrate initially because we get a really nice view from this particular angle. This is 2020 film. This is the AFC divisional round loss in Buffalo, 17-3. Look at the structure that the Bills utilize. They were a base 4-3 team at that time. So when I say that, I mean these three inside linebackers here. Early in the game, in fact, the first 4 possessions, they're willing to cede ground in terms of their alignment with their safeties. They weren't pressuring up to create an 8-man front. You can actually create an 8-man front from a 4-3 too-high look. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but you'll see it in a moment when we get to a little bit of 2024 film. So this is Ricard. The Ravens are running like this kind of wind back run play with Gus where he can bring this back behind Ricard's block. First 2 plays of the game, we hit them really hard with some downhill run concepts. You're seeing both of them here to really act as an establishing shot, if you will. Very next play, 2 safeties are lined up pretty close to one another. It's a compressed formation for the Ravens. I mean, there's the top of the numbers to the right side, and there's the top of the numbers to the left. Everyone is within probably 12 to 13 yards of one another. Pretty amazing from a horizontal standpoint. Like I said, the Bills are in a too-high structure, even though we're in a 22 personnel grouping, and this is counter option, something that was big in the Ravens offense at that time and still is utilized at times with the Ravens, but this is a somewhat unique one. 2 offensive linemen pulling to the offense's left, the downside of our screen, and then Ricard leading around to the right. So you've got this real split flow that can confuse inside linebackers. In this case, happens to be a give to Gus. I mean, man, the burst is obvious there. Like I said, this is all first possession. As we move a little bit closer down the field, and this is my premise, or one of the premises that I have, is that the Bills are willing to play more conservative style of defense before we cross the 50. We're now at the plus 40, and we're in that same 22 personnel group that I just showed you. A somewhat similar formation, in fact, in that it's compressed horizontally. Top of the numbers to the top side of our screen, and the bottom there, everyone is compressed here. Perhaps a little bit wider, maybe 14 yards from the tight end to the top to the receiver down to the bottom. And it's a 6-1 look. There's the lone inside linebacker for the Bills. It's a 4-3 personnel response, don't get me wrong, but that is a Sam linebacker, and that is a Will. A little bit more aggressive front. Many people call it a 6-1. Some cases it's a 6-1 lightning. You get the same exact play here. So Lamar is reading to the top side up here. You get pulling linemen to the left of the offense. In this case, it's the center and the right tackle. And then Ricard going in the opposite direction. This is one of those classic plays that we see highlights of Lamar kind of get in there behind Ricard and then bounce it back to the outside. Almost picks up the first down. You get the end zone angle just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you that are saying, Coach, why are you showing this film from that far back? I think conceptually this is part of the Bills' system, number one. And number two, I think it's their systemic response to a super athletic quarterback like Lamar, basically trying to limit his impact as much as possible with their coverage and blitz choices. Lamar's probably reading this defensive end who actually ends up tackling J.K. Dobbins. It's an option play. You can do that. Follows behind Ricard. And Tre'Davious White kind of lost in the sauce there a little bit. Ends up being a pretty big gain. Like I said, we get close to a first down. That really sets the stage for a couple of things that happen here that I think drive home the point on how the Bills historically have played defense against us. Force us to execute until we get into field goal range or close to it. In this case, we're absolutely in field goal range. Watch what this corner does to the downside. By the way, we just converted a 4th and 1 via penalty for the Bills where we had a fumble on the snap in some case. It's still a base 4-3 response, okay? So there's the 2 safeties up high, 4 down linemen, 3 inside linebackers. This safety to the bottom side appears to be communicating something to this corner, perhaps relative to the motion. And this exact coverage response is still in the Bills structure. Saw it in 2024. So what I mean is when this corner blitzes, this inside linebacker is going to take over the route from Marquise Brown, the wide receiver. So they're basically exchanging roles or responsibilities. Instead of the linebacker blitzing and the corner covering, which is standard, the corner blitzes, Lamar's obviously not expecting it. Who would be? And the linebacker ends up covering Marquise Brown, the receiver. Cincinnati Bengals, did this also in 2021. Highly effective from a blitz standpoint and a coverage paradigm. I think when we get those linebackers in coverage, to be honest with you, we got to try to attack them. They really, on this particular drive, maybe not every game, but on this particular drive, kind of lulled our offense to sleep. Gave us maybe a little bit of a false sense of security. Played 4-3 structure, 2 high safeties, neither one of them blitzing, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, got this big negative yardage play, pushed us off track, even though we got a big completion on a 3rd and 18. We were unable to make the field goal. In fact, I think it's one of the ones that bounced off the crossbar. Same game moving forward to the 4th possession, and you can see where we are, right? The plus 35. We've just crossed midfield, in fact, on the previous play. And so how do the Bills respond? They walk up from their 4-3 personnel, the Sam linebacker and the Will linebacker, bring them both off the edge. It's, of course, one of the many weird, rare plays that has happened in Buffalo over the years for us. Really what we need to do is win more regular season games such that we don't have to go there and play them in the playoffs on their field. It's not that we can't win there. We've had chances to be in the game. In this game, 2020, and the 2024 loss last year, we were very fortunate there, clearly, to get an incomplete pass. Lamar was able to turn that around. The point is, when we get to a certain area of the field, we've actually advanced the ball a little bit further forward despite that incompletion. There was a penalty on the Bills. We're now on the plus 35. So even closer to field goal range on the 4th possession, and it's a 2nd and 5. This is one of their inside linebackers out of their 4-3 structure, and that's the field side safety. I think it's Micah Hyde. Both guys coming downhill. Look at what they're trying to create with all this scrum or this mess at the line of scrimmage. Right? And it's mission accomplished for them, to be honest with you. They're able to it's commendable how Gus is able to almost convert this, or get close to it, I guess I should say, on a 2nd and 5. Really remarkable. You get the end zone angle, you see what I mean. We're talking about prime Gus Edwards, super athletic. There's Milano, who's going to be the blitzer from the right, the boundary. And there is Hyde, who's going to be the blitzer from the field. Norman, the boundary side corner, is also got nothing to deal with at all because of the alignment that we gave him. We gave him a tight end and Ricard, so two tight ends down to the boundary. So as a result, Norman is able to step down along with Milano and really fill and set to the outside. Unfortunately for him, Gus jukes him out of his shoes, and like I said, somehow was able to get close to the first down. My point in bringing all of this up is that they've played defense against us based on field position. That's just classic defense from a too-high structure. And then the difference is when they get third downs, third and medium, third and long, they force the ball out of Lamar's hands. I'm not going to show a bunch of plays from 2019, but I want to hammer home this point a little bit more. Before we get to 2024 film, I recognize that McDermott and those guys did things a little bit differently early in the 2024 divisional round game, but they still returned to their roots or returned to their patterns by the third possession, and I'll try to prove it to you with a little bit of film. This is going to be a long video in case you can't tell. 2019, this is the regular season win, I think week 14 on the road, 24-17. Look at the structure that we've got. And we do have two tight ends on the field, okay? There's Boyle and I think Andrews, and you've got 4-3 structure. Boundary side safety is walked up a little bit closer. The field side safety is off screen to our left, and he's at a deeper depth than 21 Poyer is. Run concept for Ingram, inconsequential to what we're talking about, except for the fact that we just crossed midfield. You can see where we are. There's the 40, there's the 50, so we just crossed midfield on the previous snap, and now we're moving into field goal position. This is 2 plays later. We're on the plus 32. That's the 32-yard line there. What do you notice? Yeah, they do still have 4-3 structure in here. There's the Mike linebacker, Edmonds, who's since left. Milano is off screen to their left. He's the will linebacker, so he's into the boundary. He's going to blitz. And then 57, this linebacker to the right, which will be called their Sam, he is going to blitz off the right side, the field side. This is one of the famous plays for Lamar on option concepts, basically where he jukes Matt Milano. You can see Milano off the edge a little bit here. And Lamar clearly looking in that direction. Let's just see this one a couple of times. First of all, because it's fun. Second of all, to illustrate the fact that once we get down to field goal range or close to it, the Bills' defensive choices have drastically changed. Additional to that, this is the field side inside linebacker coming all the way around. Great hustle. Was it not for his effort, Lamar probably could still be running. The idea is that that you accept for a moment that's how the Bills have played defense against us. More conservative between the -20 and the +38, maybe the +40. A little bit more aggressive once we get inside the 40 or close to it. That changes the dynamic a little bit on third downs, and what I mean is here's a 3rd and 10. It's an empty look for us, but the Bills were already in this sticks look. Now, I say sticks, I'm kind of getting away with one there. There's only 6 guys lined up on the line of scrimmage, so really I would call that a mug look and not sticks. Sticks is generally 7 players lined up on the line, but it's still mission accomplished for the Bills. They want to get the ball out of Lamar's hands quick. They don't want to let him scramble. They can't tackle him. I mean, we just kind of saw that illustrated by the play with Milano missing the tackle into the boundary. 6 players rushing, and in this case, the free rusher, I think, is Jerry Hughes out to the right-hand side. It's a win for the Bills from a conceptual standpoint if they force the ball out of Lamar's hands quick. He can't scramble, right? That's a win for them. It's a double win when they get a sack like that, really. Let's be honest. The idea isn't to get a sack on all of those plays, all of the usages of sticks or a mug look. The idea is to force Lamar to get rid of the ball quickly. And I think it's their patented way of defending the Ravens, defending Lamar over the years. Third down, don't let him convert by running the football. That's just classic way of trying to defend an athletic quarterback. It's a pain in the butt to defend athletic quarterbacks no matter what level you're at. And you can imagine for NFL defenses, NFL caliber athletes, when they run into someone that they literally cannot tackle, that their answers may have to be different depending on the situation. Their base 4-3 has now morphed or changed into a nickel 4-2-5 structure because of how spectacular Taron Johnson is. But really, the approach has still been the same. Now, the points per game hasn't been great from a Ravens standpoint against the Bills, other than the Week 4 win in the regular season in Baltimore in 2024, right? We missed a couple of field goals in 2020. We forfeited the go-ahead field goal possibly in our home loss in Week 4 in 2022, and that led to the interception in the end zone on 4th down. from a Bills perspective, what they have done, they believe has worked. I do, however, think that the insertion of Monken into this dynamic, along with Derrick Henry last year, totally shifted things. It moved things in our favor. It just did. Now, there was personnel upgrades, on our part as well. Bateman got healthy. We drafted Zay Flowers. They hadn't faced him yet. Now, for 2025, got DeAndre Hopkins. I think Monken's philosophy of forcing you, the defense, to defend things into the boundary just as much as you have to defend things to the field really matches up well with the Bills' 4-2-5 nickel defensive structure. All right, with all that being said, let's kind of get into the proof of that, and I think how Monken changed the dynamic and maybe forced the Bills to evolve a little bit in the playoff game. Now, there's also the factor of the personnel that's on the field. I don't think they had Taron Johnson or Matt Milano available for this Week 4 game, so there's a drastic difference in the available talent that the Bills had. But in any case, it's 21 personnel. This is, of course, the first play of the game, and we've got Ricard and Andrews into the boundary with 2 receivers down here to the field. What does that do for their nickel 4-2-5 structure? Guarantees that the nickel will be to the field. And since the boundary side safety wrap is not rolled down, talking about here, then this makes things almost too easy for the Ravens to accomplish with the wham trap concept. Monken knows what he's going to get. Here's the boundary side safety being blocked by Ricard. He originates here. Being blocked by Andrews there, who's lined up at receiver to the boundary. Almost becomes too easy, like I said. Once the boundary side safety is removed from that run fit and he's at depth, you can get things accomplished a whole lot easier, a whole lot more directly, if you will, and you get results like this. An 87-yard touchdown run by Henry to open up the game. Before we get to the playoff game, I do want to talk about a couple of other things that Monken did in this Week 4 regular season matchup that are instructive and that I think he'll probably pull out at certain points in time to see how the Bills defend it. So this is going to be a 4-3 reaction by the Bills to 22 personnel for the Ravens. Now, that's going to be impacted by the availability of Ricard. Apparently, he hasn't practiced in a while, so who knows if he's actually going to play. But here's the too high structure. Yes, the boundary side safety is a little bit closer. He should be, right? He's got a tight end and a fullback, in this case Ricard, lined up in the exact same way they were on the previous snap. And what I mean is tight end and Ricard with the boundary line being closest to them. Fast forward or rewind back to the play we were just talking about. There's the boundary line. Let me get that off the screen, sorry. Here's the boundary line here. Ricard and the tight end into the boundary along with a running back, in this case Justice Hill. So 3 to the boundary, forcing the Bills to A, play their base 4-3 structure, and then B, be worried about the possibility of the fast sweep, where you could have Hill and or Ricard leading. Normally you get a pin down by the outside receiver / tight end, but that's not the play here. When Monken went to field side concepts in this game, early especially, he used speed. He had a screen to Flowers on the first play of the second possession. Here we've got the dash concept to Justice Hill out into the flats. Remember, Justice Hill lined up into the boundary, and the Bills, responded with their base 4-3 structure. That's an inside linebacker trying to chase Justice Hill as opposed to potentially Taron Johnson. So it's all about the personnel that Monken puts on the field and then the formation that he lines up in that kind of forces the Bills' hand, if you will. Additional to that, the design, since we've got a tight end up here and only a tight end, he's going to release somewhat of an outside release and occupy this field side corner. And what that does is just ensure that you've got an absolute one-on-one in space between the inside linebacker and Justice Hill, and we obviously see who won that matchup. It's a dash concept is what I think a lot of people refer to it as. It's just brilliant stuff by Monken, if you ask me, of threatening into the boundary and then countering you back to the field. Same play from the end zone angle, by the way. You can see the base 4-3 structure. We haven't crossed midfield yet here, which is somewhat related to my overall point. This looks like it could be a power read, right? Meaning Lamar giving the ball possibly on the fast sweep and then reading this boundary side DN. So the Ravens, don't have to block that boundary side DN. He could be being read. And in fact, I'll show you a play here in a moment. They were absolutely set up for that, and the Ravens run the exact same concept. There's Hill operating against this field side inside linebacker, which would be Taron Johnson if they were in their nickel defensive structure. And that's my whole point is Monken can control what he's going to see by going 12 personnel, 22, or maybe even 21. Again, pending Ricard's actual availability. Later on in the same drive, again, you get the same formation. The only difference is here it's not 22 personnel. This is 12. So I think this is an illustration of how Monken, set up plays and, in fact, kind of try to hide things from you. We're in an unbalanced set. So we've taken the left tackle and moved him over into the boundary, and Andrews is the tight end snuck down here. That's why you see these guys defensively at the second level all pointing, because they identify that it's a three-man surface with twins to that side, and one of those players has got to be on the line of scrimmage. Same exact motion that we just showed you, right? Flowers going in motion, potential for Hill to lead out into the boundary, and in fact it is a read. Too high structure for the Bills versus unbalanced, which is interesting. Number one, if you ask me, I'm not sure how you stop it. Clearly should have been a give. I think Lamar just misread this. We're reading this defensive end, 99, who I'm not even sure who that is. Don't mean to be disrespectful, just don't know who that is necessarily. And Lamar keeps it. Looks like it should be completely bottled up on a 1st and 10. Somehow, Lamar, the magician, gets 3 yards out of this. We would like for him, obviously, not to take those hits on the interior with 2 or 3 or 4 guys there. This should be a give read. I think Monken called it as a read and didn't tell Lamar what to do. There's the tight end set backside, 3-man surface with Falele, Rosengarten, and Stanley, which means that it's unbalanced. The read would be this defensive end here with Hill getting out in front and Flowers running the sweep. I would love to see us run this play this week against the Bills. To me, this should have been a give. You've got the boundary side Will blocked. Additional to that, off screen, who you won't see. The wide receiver is blocking the front side inside linebacker as well. Should have been a give, in my opinion. But in any case, it's an illustration, I think, of how Monken has a number of plays set up to threaten the boundary. In this case, the potential for the fast sweep or QB power read. You get the idea, right? Monken, I think at this point, if you watched my content much, and I'm sure other content creators mention it as well, Monken enjoys, almost prefers to attack to the boundary. And exploiting their nickel 4-2-5 is simpler, maybe easier to do than when they don't roll the boundary side safety down. When they've generally been in that too high safety structure, splitting, leaving the middle of the field open, Monken can get more things done easier and take advantage of them into the boundary. If you're not willing to do something, basically kick the boundary side safety down, or even put that DN there in more of a read and react mode. Let me give you an example that's a little bit more direct, and it'll make it clear if you ask me. Same game, we're into the second quarter. You can see the ball's on the right hash. So this is the field, and this is the boundary, the short side of the field. I don't know what you look at when you watch games, but one of the first things I look for is, where was the ball spotted? It's 22 personnel, so we've got 2 tight ends up here. I think it's Kolar and Likely. What we typically do if we're going to run pin, pull, toss, or pin, pull, pitch is we pin down with the receiver, and then the tackle will pull. Sorry about that. The tackle will pull and wrap and lead for the tailback, in this case Henry, to run out into the boundary. Huge weapon, right? We destroyed the Cowboys with it in week 3, so clearly the Bills were prepared for it. There's the boundary side safety. It kind of acts like a domino effect, if you will, meaning because of the safety's presence and the way the Bills move him, so we're talking about here, he kind of stunts to the inside, it acts a little bit like a domino effect. So Rosengarten had to take that safety. Aguilar pinned down the DN, just like I drew up. So as a result of that, we've got things pinned for a moment, but the domino effect, what I mean is this inside linebacker is able to run free, and that's who Rosengarten would have been able to block if this safety's feet had been back here. Essentially, what I'm saying is Monken will force you by play concept and formation to put the boundary side safety down to stop the run. If we can do that, then Monken will attack to the field more often, especially with the pass game. That's the inside linebacker, by the way, making the tackle On Henry, we'll give you the end zone angle so you can see for yourself. Boundary side safety, boundary side inside linebacker. Technically, he'd be the Will. This will be the Mike. This will be the Sam. Set up to the field. Rosengarten would normally be able to move up here if he's not going to pull and wrap to the outside. That's not the scheme that we actually use there in terms of that wrap. As a result of 24 of the safety stepping down, Rosengarten has to take him. And then that allows 42 to flow over the top and get to where he can make the tackle underneath of the block by Ricard on the boundary side corner. Hopefully all of that makes sense the way that I explained it. I'm going to look at some of the adjustments that were made in the playoff game. I do want to caution and tell you my opinion. They're not as consistent as it was made out to be. Early on, yes, there were some different coverage looks, but it's the same structure from a personnel standpoint. And what I mean is, this is the first play of the game. So we have 21 personnel on the field. Ricard and Andrews, that's 21 personnel, right? 2 receivers here and here. Notice where the ball is on the 27-yard line. We would expect them to be in a 2-high safety structure with Hamlin's feet there and Rapp's feet there. That's not what they do. Hamlin has walked up, and it looks like he's playing man on Andrews. Couple of things to say there. Number one, would you like that matchup as a Ravens fan? Mark Andrews in the past game against Damar Hamlin. Absolutely. If we could get him isolated in man coverage on him, we would take that matchup. We would love to see that 6, 8, 10 times a game this week. Or last year in the playoff game. But it was effective early on. I think our O-line played like shit. To be honest with you, they have created an 8-man front from their base 4-3 personnel. 42 is the Sam linebacker. The Mike is Bernard. And then the Will set to the field in this case is Milano 58. You can see that they've given away or shown us that it's man by Hamlin's willingness to move with Andrews. Lead concept for Ricard, or for Henry, behind Ricard. We don't really get anything done here. Rosengarten can't scoop 50 on the backside, number one. Number two, I think we get stood up by Macari on the front side. It's an underfront, so basically an underfront means that this is the strong side declared of the formation, and that's why I said that Milano was the Will lined up to the field. In an underfront or a slid 50, whatever you want to call it, the nose tackle goes to the strength, a shade, a 1, whatever you want to call it, and the D tackle goes away. That's the 3 technique you see there. So that's why I was comfortable calling Milano the Will linebacker, even though the Will linebacker is typically set to the boundary. We can't cut off this 4 technique. I think it's Rousseau, 50, and that's Rosengarten, who can't get him cut off. He kind of runs into maybe Filele and the D tackle on the backside. It's a really nice combo by Linderbaum. No real ability to cut off their guys on the backside early in the game. Very next play, still first possession, and they're in a man setup, right? Benford, Taron Johnson in now. Hamlin, I think that's 31, who used to play for the Packers up there. Clearly looks like a man setup. And we motion across with the ball on the left hash. Milano is now set into the boundary. The Will always go to the boundary in 11 personnel. And so we've got Andrews climbing through here to pin down on Milano, which I think is a great play concept from the standpoint of get the Will blocked. Milano is disruptive. Get him blocked. Get him sealed off. Force Hamlin or the boundary side corner to make tackles. The problem is Macari gets wrecked by the defensive end up there. I think it's Espinosa or Espinosa. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it. The O-line was really bad on the first 2 or 3 possessions. Same play from the end zone angle. There's the nickel 4-2-5. Taron Johnson's off screen to our right. Like I said, they're in a man coverage structure. They're willing to play man here. Partially is that due to Zay Flowers not being available? Sure, maybe. In any case, we motion to get 31 out of there. This is the defensive end that Macari is going to try to kick out, and the guy just really stabs Macari in the chest, stands him up completely, and then folds inside to make the tackle on Derrick Henry. Now, getting into some of the things, the drawbacks for them to play in more man. I don't believe this is a man team from a personnel standpoint. I don't believe they're drafting guys to play man. They just drafted Maxwell Hairston. Unfortunately, he's on IR. I loved his film from Kentucky, especially in 2023. I thought his 2023 film was some of the best corner film in this last year's draft from a ceiling standpoint. He's a great zone corner, incredible awareness. People might call it instincts if they want to, the ball skills to go along with it. They drafted him to play in their scheme, which has typically been zone-based. Here they are on third down playing zone to the bottom side of our screen, to the trip side, and then man up here. That's going to be man on Andrews. And watch what that opens up. So Lamar, first of all, looking directly at the mesh concept between Andrews and Likely. Basically a pair of low drags, if you will. It's a too high safety response on a 3rd and 8. Maybe it's a 3rd and 7. And then because they played man on Andrews, the corner who would be over here in a zone structure isn't there. And so Lamar against a 4-man rush escapes out of there. I really wish that Justice Hill had been able to pick up Taron Johnson. I just don't think 43 Bernard is ever going to tackle Lamar Jackson in open field with that much space. If Justice Hill was able to pick up Taron Johnson, maybe Justice thought that Lamar would be able to just run past Taron Johnson. In any case, an example, if you ask me, of the danger of playing man and only rushing 4. And I think that leads itself backwards and also forwards into some of the things that they did in this playoff game on third down situations. You'll see an example of it here in a few minutes. Still first possession, and it's a 1st and 10 with 12 personnel into the boundary. This is a blown coverage in man. I don't think they're very sound in man, at least last year on film. Is the teaching any different this year? Hairston's out. Tre'Davious White apparently is injured. I'm not sure what his status will be. It's a play-action run concept with Henry going into the boundary and then Likely stepping to the field to pick up Hamlin, who, oh, by the way, as a safety, is kind of blitzing off the edge. This inside linebacker, I think it's 43 here, my apologies, loses Henry. Absolutely wide open down the field. Lamar is able to see him, try to get the ball downfield to Henry. Could have been obviously a huge play. We all know how it finished up. A big drop by Henry. It's pure luck from a Bills standpoint, obviously. It's very shocking for Henry to drop that ball. My point in showing this and the previous play, the scramble by Lamar, is that the Bills are going to make choices that are consistent with their personnel that's out there and what they're good at. In my opinion, based upon the film I saw from this game, they're not exceptional at playing man. I know they've got different corners out on the field. Whether Tre'Davious White is an upgrade over, I think it's Rasul Douglas 31 or not, that's up to you to judge if you want. 3rd and 3 on that first possession. And again, this is going to be, first of all, it's a smart play by 43. We've got 3 to the boundary, and we're going to run snag smash. So angled hook, smash concept, and into the flats with the running back. Really nice job of adapting by Bateman. Lamar is clearly looking to that side, right? That's the read side. Here's Bateman kind of snagging it up. Pull it back a little bit and watch the communication between 43 and Milano. Since Henry released to the boundary, he's calling Milano, hey, push, push, push. Milano can push to Henry. That leaves 43 on Bateman, not from a man standpoint, but in that area. And then since Lamar is able to, kind of extend this, Bateman just adjusts it, and you can see he's absolutely lost 43. I think that's a guy that we can attack in the pass game. I'm not saying he's terrible in pass coverage, but what I mean is we've got 2 blown coverages in this first half. I didn't show you all of them, by the way. We've got 2 blown coverage, and he's a part of both of them. This play here is not one I'm calling a blown coverage. This is just a difficult situation when Lamar has time. Again, a 4-man rush. He's going to make plays like that, getting the ball down the field. It's a great catch by Bateman. His awareness, adjustment in the red zone, clearly worthy of all the attention and all the accolades that he got, all the praise from last year. Moving forward, third possession. If you trust or hear what everyone says. Oh, the Bills played more aggressive defense. Well, what are they doing here on the third possession in a too high safety structure out of 4-3? Now, you can still create an 8-man front, all right? And they do so here, in fact. There's Rasul Douglas, the boundary side corner. Since he has no receiver to cover, he can walk up. You really do this, I think, in my experience, when this defensive end is head up on the tight end. I was never comfortable doing this when the defensive end was inside like a 5 or a 7. You do this when that defensive end is head up on the tight end, and this guy can basically now be your force player. Additional to that, from their 4-3 structure, inside linebacker has walked up. So, really at this point, kind of created a 6-2 if you want to count Douglas. In any case, created an 8-man front. This is the possession where the Ravens got the run game going again, and really dominated in the second half, clearly. Kolar, man, with a badass combo here from the field. He's the tight end to the field who went in motion. And so he's going to combo down and then get to the inside linebacker level, the second level. There he is there, and then he's going to move up to, I believe that's Milano. And then that allows Henry to shoot through there. And it's both safeties, ironically, that make the tackle. So the point is, if we can block things well up front, when we block things well up front, the Bills, are going to need their safeties to get involved to stop the run game. I think we've got some personnel advantages, too, at the receiver position with Bateman, Flowers, and then Hopkins being available now. This is still third possession, 1st and 10. Again, a too high safety structure, even though the boundary side safety wrap is obviously a little bit closer. But compare this to the first play, right? This is the same formation. 21 personnel. It was a mirrored look, right? But against the last time we saw this guy walked up, got on the line, and then Hamlin came down. Remember, I had it spot shadowed in orange, and he was looking right at Andrews essentially in man. That's not the look that they provide here. Look at the boundary side safety flying out of there, so he's getting depth. No read there at all. This is what their defensive structure is comfortable with. If it's a lead concept here with Ricard in front of Justice Hill. 94, unfortunately for them, can't track down Hill, who gets out to the edge. 3 inside linebackers in Milano, Bernard, and I'm not sure who 43 is. But to compare it to the first play that I showed you from this game, he would have been walked up, and then Hamlin would walk down and essentially replace his footsteps and look directly at the tight end and play him man. That's not what they're doing. They're back into what I would say is their regular too high safety structure. Macari with a pretty good combo here, if you ask me, with Linderbaum on the D tackle, nose tackle, up to the mic. Bernard. How willing are the Bills going to be to allow these type of things to occur? I think Monken has the patience, certainly got the talent at his disposal to be able to do things like that if the Bills are going to present us those 4-3 too high safety looks. Moving backwards a little bit in terms of what we're talking about, this is 2nd and 14 on the third possession, and the Bills do not trust playing man. What they do trust, in my opinion, is this type of stuff. I would call this stick split 0. We've got 4 DBs back deep on the 2nd and 14. Essentially, their heels are almost at the sticks, the line to gain. And they also have 7 in the box at this point in time. So not a mug look, but sticks. All of those guys typically are looking at the quarterback. It does look like this safety is actually looking at the receivers. This guy is clearly not. He's looking in the backfield to see where Lamar is looking, which side he is. That's typically what sticks gives you, is that those guys are looking for where the quarterback glances first. In this case, it's over the middle quick to likely a really speedy tackle. This mentality, get the ball out of his hands, right? It still fits, if you ask me, with the mentality of playing too high safeties earlier in the possessions, earlier in games, because those things are designed to limit the big play. Well, from the Bills' standpoint, I wonder if in this playoff game with Nose Flowers and Rashad Bateman out after eventually, if their idea of not giving up a big play was not allowing Lamar to scramble. That seems consistent with what they've done on third downs over the course of the last 4, 5, 6 years. And from their perspective, they probably think it's been pretty successful. Last play that I'll show you here, and my assertion here is that this is not, or this was not, a great man coverage team. This is a 3rd and 10 on that same third possession. In fact, it's the very next play. After that stick split 0, completion to Likely for 4 yards. Here's the concept. Andrews is taking his man, which is Taron Johnson, kind of up the field, making contact with him. It's a physical version of man. And then this is Anthony Miller running underneath. Bateman running an out to that bottom side. It's a simple concept, really. You've got a one-man screen kind of attached to this, to the top side. What I mean is Likely has moved out to the field, and there is Justice Hill behind him, so we could throw the screen with Likely out to lead, and Miller is going to end up wide open underneath. They're just trailing. Slow in coverage, if you ask me. I don't think that this is a man. I don't mean slow of foot. I mean slow to recognize the concept. If you have watched all of the Ravens-Bills games in the last 2 or 3 days like I have, and someone says, hey, they're going to come in and they're going to play a ton of man-to-man in passing situations, not sticks, but regular traditional man-to-man, I would take those matchups. And that's not to sound arrogant. I think we've got really good football players at the receiver position. Lamar can get things done there. And if you're only going to blitz 4 and play man, the danger there is Lamar escaping the pocket and you, as a defense, having no one to contain him or keep him, prevent him from scrambling. To me, the Bills are aware of this. They're aware of what they're vulnerable to. And in my opinion, they will stay with what they've always been good at historically. That's my assertion here. And I think that really creates conflict for them with the boundary side safety. As you look at Henry's touchdown run, right, to open the Week 4 regular season game last year, the boundary side safety being rolled up could have been a difference, and maybe that some more resistance there at least. I think Monken's style of play calling, the concepts that he creates, it's designed to exploit that space, the boundary side where the safety would be. Essentially, if you put the nickel to the boundary, then of course Monken's going to run everything to the field. And if you drop the boundary side safety down, you're no longer in a too high safety structure, which in my opinion is what McDermott and their defensive staff is comfortable with. I think this is a matchup where Monken starts off 1 or 2 steps ahead for multiple reasons. Number one, the personnel he's got at his disposal. Lamar, Derrick Henry, our great receivers, Andrews, right? And where he attacks traditionally is a place that the Bills have a relative weakness, into the boundary. Not because of Matt Milano. He's a spectacular football player. In fact, I did a film study of him in like 2022, complimenting him. So, I'm a Ravens content creator. To have done a video about Milano at that point in time tells you the level of respect that I have for him, and Taron Johnson for that matter. I still think that this Bills team is not a man coverage team from a foundational standpoint. 3 blown coverages in the first half, all in man. I didn't show all of them. The one where Lamar is able to escape the 4-man rush, like I did show you, where it's zone to the trip side, and then Rasul Douglas playing man on Andrews. Lamar, sure enough, is able to escape to that side. I would welcome more man in Week 1. I recognize that there'll be plenty of conversation leading up to the game about how the Bills switch strategies in the playoffs, because I remember all those things that were talked about. And then they turn around and draft a great zone corner in Maxwell Hairston early in the draft. I think that the awareness of what the Bills has done historically is something that's important, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. I don't think they're going to go away from McDermott's scheme large scale. Sure, they lined up a little bit more aggressively on that first possession, but as I showed you, by the third drive, they were right back in line with some of the stuff they've done out of their nickel or their base 4-3. And that's when we got the run game going. Additional in the second half, our offensive line played better, and I thought Monken's play calls were even sharper. Bottom line, when our offensive line was getting their ass whipped early in the game, we couldn't get the run game to generate much. And when they started playing the way that a quality offensive line should in the second half, we were able to get things accomplished. I think Monken, Lamar will have a very in-depth and detailed game plan to attack what the Bills do, which again I believe will be generally in line with what they've always done against the Ravens. Try to limit the big play, either force the ball out of Lamar's hands quickly, stick split 0, or lay back in a too high safety structure and try to limit the big play, force us to execute 10 or 12 play drives. However, once we get past or near the 40, that probably means some type of blitz that is anomalous and designed to catch us by surprise. And those things have worked in the past. I'm fine with the man matchups. I'm really interested in seeing what they do in terms of how they match up with Andrews when they're in their 4-3 structure. When they're in their nickel, it'll generally be Taron Johnson lined up over him unless we put Andrews into the boundary. In any case, if 22 personnel isn't as available because Ricard may or may not play, I think that's a pretty big deal because we could go 22 personnel, ensure that Taron Johnson's off the field, basically keep them in their 4-3 personnel, and then use Andrews, likely if he were available, to attack certain guys in coverage. Those things may not be available, first because Likely's not playing, and then second because Ricard's status is up in the air, at least as I record this. In any case, this is an interesting chess match for me. I do think that Monken starts off a step or maybe 1.5 steps ahead, and it's his job to stay that way or even advance that differential. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. Some of this work is related to what EA, Agrowan, and I have tried to put together and chronicle for Wednesday's edition of Inside the Coverage, where we're going to focus on the Bills' coverage choices against the Ravens in a little bit more detail than even I presented here. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look at the Week 1 matchup in Buffalo against the Bills, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.